This chapter of the Pocket Guide to the Empire focuses on the territories of the Second Aldmeri Dominion. These regions cover the Summerset Isles and Valenwood. The Elsewhere Confederacy also had a treaty with the Aldmeri Dominion at this time, but we will focus on that in the next chapter. Bear in mind the context in which this guide was written, as Tiber Septim's empire considered the Aldmeri Dominion their #1 enemy at the time, and therefore this book is quite biased against any mer. The Aldmeri Dominion is a relatively recent creation. Formerly divided into the two realms of the Summerset Isles and Valenwood, the Aldmeri Dominion has its origins in Second Era 830, when the heirs of the Cameron dynasty began to fight over the Valenwood throne. When a faction of the Bosmer made overtures of peace to their longtime enemies in West Cyrodiil, territorial concessions in return for Colovian support for the faction's claimant, the Altmer of Somerset invaded the Valenwood nations. Citing a stewardship clause in a treaty from 1,000 years before, the High Elves quickly established a provisional government, the Altmer, on behalf of their own claimant, Cameron Anaximes, whose bloodline had struck the pact with the Aldmeri Council in the first place. As the Cyrodiilic Empire was still in the shambles of the interregnum, the Colovians were quickly driven back by the Aldmeri army. The other heirs of the throne were silenced, the Wood Elves thanked their cousins for bringing back stability, and the High Elves reminded Anaximes the price of Somerset's aid. 50 years' fealty to the King of Eleanor, the Aldmeri Dominion was born. The Altmer strengthened its hold on the Valenwood nations during the foundation of the Third Empire. Savage Bosmer tribes skirmished with the estates along the River Strid, whipped to a frenzy by their High Elven masters. With the Empire now reunified under Tiber Septim, these attacks have subsided. But encampments wait on either side of the Valenwood border, awaiting a decisive battle. On the occasions when the Elves probe the Empire's defenses, the legions have sent them back in tatters. Indeed, the Colovians have taken to calling their enemy the Aldmeri Dominion for the womanly offensives of its elven soldiers. The situation at sea, however, is another story, and the Dominion terrorizes the southern waters from the Cape of the Blue Divide to the Topal Bay. Their sorcery has made allies of a few Reachmen, the Mormor of Pyandonia, and as of this writing, perhaps even the Elsewhere Confederacy. Though no formal declaration of war has been made, Tamriel is divided between the Empire and the Elder races, and Tiber Septim has made it known to the Altmer that he is the true Emperor of Cyrodiil, and heir to all of its former holdings. The Elves of Tamriel have yet to answer. Considering we have endured their offenses for 2,000 years, we know surprisingly little about the Aldmeri. Only Morrowind, under Skyrim domination during the First Empire, and open to travel and trade during most of the Common Era, is somewhat better known. The Elves of High Rock and Cyrodiil were either wiped out long ago or displaced into obscurity. As for the Elves of the Dominion, our knowledge of their regions is limited to brief imperial occupations, or to the translations we have of their literature. Elven literature appears to have been rare within Empire. This is explored in the next section. The scarcity of Elven writings. Much of the blame for this can be laid on the Alessian Order, which was tireless in ferreting out and destroying Elven writings during its long dominance. Today we are left with the beautiful heresies of the Anuad surviving only by virtue of their popularity and proliferation, and perhaps a dozen more works of lesser renown. This, though, does not explain fully the scarcity of Elven letters. We might turn to Dilxexes, an early human scholar, for another answer. After studying the financial records of the Durrani hegemony, a high elven merchant family that exploited the human kingdoms of its day, he had this to say: these records may help to explain why so much of Aldmeri literature is forbidden, scorned, or untranslated, for I have seen their like before. The Durrani were either exceedingly paranoid or their system of economy so inextricably linked with dangerous theosophist numeral symbolism that much of what is recorded here requires sorcerous precautions on the part of the reader. Hidden magic is everywhere incorporated in their writing, signs and preternatural runes and correspondences. In expenditure columns even, or margins that can be fatal to the uninitiated. Crucial pages were covered with the spittle of the previous translator, who had babbled idiotically over the text for days before catching fire. Of particular scarcity is information about either the High Elves or the Summerset Isles. During the Second Empire, ambassadors were allowed only in the capital of Valenwood, and thus any description of the Altmeri homeland is confined to that city alone. Furthermore, we can offer only this brief but reliable account of the High Elven people. It comes from the journals of Eric of Guise, Rieman's emissary to the Altmer, who lived among them around First Era 2820. High Elves consider themselves to be the only perfect race. Over hundreds of generations they have bred themselves into a racially pure line, and are now almost identical to one another in appearance. The theory that the High Elves do not reproduce as quickly or as often as humans is false. Rather, and to my horror, they kill 9 out of 10 babies born to them in their obsession for purity. The Altmer despise other elves as unsophisticated churls and barely consider the non-Aldmeri races at all. They pay their imperial tithes, I'm sure, not for fear of war with the humans, but rather to keep an invasion from infecting their islands. Breeding outside the pure line is a terrible, unthinkable crime, and taken as prima facie evidence of the tainted blood of the individual in question. If they were pure, they wouldn't have the impulse to do it. Exile to the mainland is regarded as equivalent to a death sentence, since there is no purpose in living outside their ideal society. They have a high regard for order and gravitate naturally towards wearing uniforms and speaking in formal patterns. Their trees and their livestock have been bred to be as standard and ideal as they are. They have no real names of their own, only combinations of numbers that, when spoken aloud, sound to human ears as such. They feel no real tenderness for one another and have no concept of compassion. They are decadent and self-obsessed and prize form and their own brand of manners or style as their main value. Aware of their aristocratic position, they surround themselves with riches and treasures, the works of great artists and the finest of everything, but have no real appreciation for any of these things. Each of them is concerned solely with himself, and as a result they do no real socializing. They meet and hold courts only to demonstrate their importance and power to each other. Rarely do they speak to the human ambassadors of Cyrodiil. When they do, their speech is full of riddles, or spell words that enchant one to a satisfied madness. Valenwood was claimed as a wasteland province of the Second Empire, and its geography is partially described in several imperial surveys. Valenwood is noteworthy in that it has no cities or townships built by the Wood Elves themselves. Their strict Green Pact prohibits the use of wood or other vegetable derivatives as building materials, and they are too improvident to learn the use of stone. Valenwood is inhabited by a variety of creatures other than elves. An example is the great apes of Valenwood. The great apes, or Imga, are native beastfolk of Valenwood. They see the High Elves as their lords and masters and as a portrait of an ideal civilized society. Great apes go to desperate measures to emulate the High Elves. They wear capes, practice with the dueling sword, and attempt to speak with perfect enunciation and courtly manners despite their gravelly baritone voices. Each Imga bears some kind of title, be it Baron, Duke, Earl, or the like, which they use when addressing the members of the Thalmor. Needless to say, there are no landowning great apes. More extreme great apes shave their bodies and powder their skin white to seem more like the High Elves. They often cut themselves in the process, creating the truly pathetic picture of a naked white ape, skin dotted pink with blood, strutting around the trading posts of Valenwood with mock nobility. The Imga feel that humans are beneath them as lesser beastfolk, and pretend to find their smell exceedingly offensive. A great ape holds a perfumed corner of his cape to his nose when men are around. Even I'm not this petty towards Inna was. The Wood Elves permitted a few roads to be built by the Second Empire, but neglect their maintenance, as the Bosmer do not need roads to move easily through the thickest forest. These roads would be now overgrown were it not for the High Elves of the Thalmor, who have repaired and widened them for rapid passage of their arms to and from the coast. Much of the region is impenetrable mangrove and coastal rainforest with few grasslands or blade areas until further north near the Strident coast. Many of the human trading posts established by the Second Empire have been abandoned or claimed by the beastfolk centaurs, orcs, and imga that share the forests with the Bosmer tribes. Humans, in general, have learned not to intrude in the forests of Valenwood. While they once depended entirely on the annual strid meat caravans of the Colovian West, the Wood Elves now rely entirely on the sea piracy of the Dominion for whatever they require from the outside world. Though they are excellent archers, the Green Pact forces their bowyers and fletchers to use bone or similar materials, or to buy bows and arrows from other cultures. The use of woodcrafts created by another race is not forbidden, nor is the sale of their own Valenwood timber, as long as it is collected by a non-Bosmer. The Wood Elves, of course, cannot smoke anything of a vegetable nature. Bone pipes are common, however, and are filled with caterpillars or tree grubs. For a brief time, the Colovian armies used Wood Elf archers, as in the War of Rihad 2 years past. The Bosmer proved to be too undisciplined and prone to desertion for further use. They would sometimes walk into the shade of a single tree and vanish. Their forest coupling skills are remarkable. The title of their most famous poem, the Me Eli Idion, means the 1,000 benefits of hiding. At the trading posts of the Empire, the Wood Elves become very happy. Some creations of carpentry delight them to no end. Most of it has never occurred to them. They bring their own trade items: hides, river pearls, finger bone charms made from the still magically charged hands of their dead wizards. They often buy woodcrafts that they have no use for or whose use they never bother to find out. Some of the bravest Wood Elven warriors use wagon wheels as shields or, as they think, impressive headgear. While sometimes amusing, the Bosmer have a bestial side. They can resort to animal shapes if they need to, or water. Their most dreaded transformation is the Wild Hunt, which killed King Borgus for the iniquities of his Eltion faith. The Wild Hunt is a pack of shifting forest demons and animal gods, thousands strong, which sweeps through the countryside, killing everything in its path. The Wood Elves do not like to talk about the hunt, and I gather they do not feel proud of this power at all. Gummany, my Bosmer companion of late, tells me that the hunt is used for justice, but that also every monster in the world that has ever been comes from a previous hunt. Those Bosmer that go wild, they do not return. The traveler is advised to avoid the lands of the Aldmeri Dominion. Though the Thalmor have representatives at the Imperial City, and the Cyrodiilic Grand Vizier Zurin Arctis is meeting with the King of Alinor, contact with the Bosmer and Altmer are often disagreeable to the common Imperial citizen. Avoid their books and magic. Wear the permitted weaponry when near their borders. If you are manly and able, apply for service in the legions. I find the depiction of the Aldmeri Dominion in this book to be amusing but extremely biased and inaccurate. Bosmer is primitive and mindless elves with no technological innovations and strange barbaric customs. Altmer is psychopathic enemies to man. While I'm no fan of these other elven races, these depictions are not accurate. Let's finish this chapter by talking about places of note within this second Aldmeri Dominion. Alinor. A forbidden city for nearly 50 years, Alinor is both capital of the Summerset Isles and the heart of the Aldmeri Dominion. Human traders were only allowed at its ports, and they described the city as made from glass or insect wings. Less fantastic accounts come from the imperial emissaries of the Riemann dynasty, which describe the city as straight and glimmering, a hypnotic swirl of ramparts and impossibly high towers, designed to catch the light of the sun and break it to its component colors, which lies draped across its stones until you are thankful for nightfall. Valenesti. The walking city of the Bosmer king, Valenesti, is south in the summer and north come Hearthfire. It is the largest of Valenwood grot oaks whose magic was invoked at the dawn of recorded history. The Cameron throne is somewhere in the highest branches, as are numerous other natural dwellings. Wood elves climb about its surface like termites, or carefully swing from level to level by means of thorny vines. Humans have generally been too unsettled by the city to stay there long, though great apes and orcs are common. The Thalmor has decided to change the capital of Valenwood from Valenesti to Eldenroot for the duration of the Aldmeri Dominion. This was the chapter on the Aldmeri Dominion. We explored the tainted Imperial opinions of the Summerset Isles and Valenwood, and learned what the Imperial bureaucracy was trying to push the average human reader to believe about the Altmer. In the next chapter, we will take a glimpse at the Khajiit Elsewhere Confederacy.